Hello, BookTube. Time for another bookshelf tour. This is bookshelf number 2 of the skinny West Wall bookcase. Uh, and I'm sorry for the Luke Lane Reed's super bright backlighting. And I'm also sorry for the attire. One of you commented that you much prefer the Steve in sweatshirts look to the Steve in old man jumper look. And of course I agree. But sometimes Steve goes out in the real world and you can't dress like, a Staten Island bum when you're out in the real world. But I wanted to do this bookshelf first, and as usual, we will start with the transverse books. Now, this skinny bookshelf has tall shelves, so there are often quite a few transverse books. That's the case here. The first one being this little gem. Let me see if I can get you here. There we go. This is George Cavendish. Some of you will know him as a minor character in Wolf Hall. He wrote a brief biography of Cardinal Thomas Wolsey. And I love it. I love this little volume, first of all, but I also love the life itself. The life itself looks forward in a lot of unexpected ways to the discipline of modern biography. I read it with pleasure. The next thing I read with pleasure, but it's a little bit of a guilty pleasure. It's The Truth About Dogs. Let me see if I can get that so that you can see it. Yeah, there we go, by Volker Kriegel. And it is not a treatise, it is a succession of cartoons. And the, the cartoons are, they're just slightly indelicate. Dogs are sentimental. Dogs stink. There's also a very telling page that reveals the dog's fart. It's a gem of a thing if you're a dog lover. The next one is a reader's advance copy. I'm not really sure what it's doing here because I guess maybe because I love the look of it and I never got a finished copy. It's La Vita Noova by Dante, and this is a new translation by David Slavitt, whose translations I never particularly like. He's a very industrious translator. And I wasn't a big fan of his translations even before he decided to make some rather questionable editorial decisions. I really like Dante's little poem, and I like this version, even though I don't know. I'm pretty sure I've read better translations. It's one of the examples that we've cropped up in this library tour of books in this room, this holy of holies, this book room of mine that ought not to be here. So this is the tour is actually doing me a lot of good. And our next one here is an old one. It's Essays Classical. This is by F.W.H. Myers, and it ought not to be here. It ought to be over in the literary criticism bookshelf, but that's all right. And it's let me see if I can show you the title page. Essays Classical. It's from 100 years ago, of course, and it's just 3 long essays of the type that you would read. You once upon a time would read multi-page things in Scribner's or the Saturday Review. It's Greek oracles, Virgil, and Marcus Aurelius, and it's just the Marcus Aurelius essay in particular is very much worth rereading. I go back to it, and then the next one is. There are going to be volumes of this scattered throughout. This is Edan Wilson. This also belongs on the literary criticism shelf. This is The Bit Between My Teeth, and he is, of course, one of the founding architects of my profession. He's a great, long-winded literary critic, and this is probably my favorite volume of collection of his work, even though it's the volume that contains the short piece of his that I hate the most. His review of Tolkien, which is set the tone for clueless, blundering, condescending reviews of Tolkien ever since. It's been 100 years of people just aping that template. But he's brilliant usually, especially in the jazz era. That was the era where his spirit found a home, no matter how long he lived after that, and he lived a long time after that. Might still be alive. And then we can do the normal bookshelf, starting with a classic. This is Shakespeare's Lives. This is by Samuel Schoenbaum. This is his gigantic dissection of the various schools of biography that have attached to William Shakespeare in the century since his death, and also the various schools of conspiracy theories saying that the man from Stratford did not write the plays attributed to William Shakespeare. I love it. I think Schoenbaum is a fantastic writer. I have issues with almost every page of it. It does you and your argument no good at all, ever, to rely on arguments of authority. Arguments of authority are worthless. So if you write a book of Shakespeare's Lives in which you are going to dissect the persistent, in the last 200 years, the persistent idea that there's something wrong with the authorship of the Shakespeare plays, it does no good for you to assert flatly and without any elaboration, much less to do it for 500 pages, that there simply is no merit to such an argument. If hundreds of smart people before you have found merit in an argument and you're writing a book on that subject, it behooves you to take it seriously and talk about it. Which means that in your book about Shakespeare's Lives, you don't talk about him poaching deer as a boy or roistering with his friends as a teenager. There's no factual evidence for that at all. None whatsoever. So don't talk about it as if it's a fact. Talk about it as if it's historiography, but not as if it's biography. And he doesn't do that. I'm arguing the book all over again. But he doesn't do that to anywhere near the degree that I would like. But the book is still essential. In a shelf of Shakespeare books, you have to have this one. And then the next one is a perfect example of, I don't know, a lost art, a dying art. This is the Oxford Dictionary of Literary Quotations, assembled by Peter Kemp. And I don't know if you can make it out in the light. My edition is just annotated all to hell and gone. The pages dog-eared, underlining everywhere, because Peter Kemp has a great eye, and the people he employed, they have a great eye for great literary anecdotes and quips and quibbles and whatnot. But I worry about books like this because you can dig up a lot of these things, enough to satisfy the needs of most readers, with an internet search now. I don't think anybody would go to a bookstore and buy this thing. And I worry about that, because you can, on almost any page, you can find a great quote. Like George Orwell, here we go, from his 1946 essay, Why I Write. The great mass of human beings are not acutely selfish. After the age of about 30, they abandon individual ambition. In many cases, indeed, they almost abandon the sense of being individuals at all, and live chiefly for others, or are simply smothered under drudgery. But there are also a minority of gifted, willful people who are determined to live their own lives to the end, and writers belong in this class. And on the opposite page, there's Walter Bagehot writing a little more, the same thing, a little more concisely. Writers, like teeth, are divided into incisors and grinders. And the book is full of stuff like that. If you're looking for a browser's delight, I highly recommend the Oxford Dictionary of Literary Quotations. I just worry about the future of the next Oxford Dictionary of Literary. And then this next one will be familiar to some of you who have listened to droning, drunken, late-night rambles on this particular author. He's less than a footnote in history, and yet I have every word that he wrote. And he's invaluable. This is Archie Butt. This is the Letters of Archie Butt. Let's see if we can get a photograph of the pompous ass, shall we? Yes, there he is in full regalia. He was a Southern boy who was an aide, what we would now consider probably a body man or a bodyguard, to President Theodore Roosevelt. And then when Roosevelt left office, he could not, to his successor, William Howard Taft, he could not do other than say, you should keep Archie. He's indispensable. He'll set your appointments. He'll make sure to keep you in track. He'll keep crowds away from you. He'll help you make sense of the day. And Taft agreed and kept him on. So there's this volume, the Letters of Archie Butt, that are letters he wrote back to his sister and his mother about life in the Roosevelt White House. But then there's a 2-volume set that followed this, which is more letters from his time in the Taft White House. And they're incredible. They make incredible reading. This was an era, the turn of the 20th century was an era in which you didn't put pen to paper unless you were writing finished prose. And it's a delight to read. And I'm sure that somewhere in this in this room, we will get to that 2-volume set, because I couldn't do without it. As often as I pull this one down off the shelf, I pull that one down even more. So, and then the next one is something that we've seen before on this channel. And I don't know, I can't even remember at the moment if we've seen it before in this room. But if so, I really need to take a handle to this room. It's Leonard Woolf's The Essential Dracula, which is his hilariously anal retentive annotated version of Dracula, where the notes are a huge chunk of every page. And the notes are hilarious because he chases down every little thing, knowing perfectly well, admitting over and over again that none of these things are germane to enjoying the book, which you can, of course, enjoy without any notes at all. But even so, I so strongly recommend The Essential Dracula. You will love it, even if you don't love the book. But oh my God, if you do, if you've read the book and love it, if you know it well, you have to have it. The next thing is one of those books that if you were to come into this room and see it on the shelf, it wouldn't surprise you at all. It's The Domestic Dog. This is a study by a collection of what were at the time, this was I think in 2000, 1995, these were at the time cutting edge essays into various aspects of Canis Familiaris. It's edited by James Serpell, and it's been supplanted. A lot of those essays have been supplanted by later research in books that I have elsewhere in this apartment. But I really like this one, and I of course, it couldn't sell to the Brattle a book called The Domestic Dog, now could I? There'd be strikes all over the country. The next one is history. This is The Great Invasion by Leonard Cottrell. This is his story about the Roman conquest of Britain, starting very tentatively under Julius Caesar and then beginning, in earnest under Emperor Claudius. And Leonard Cottrell wrote all kinds of different books in his career. He was, let's see, do they tell us some hint? He was born in Wolverhampton, but let's not hold that against him. I loved it there when I went. He is the history and archaeology are his chief interests. He is well known for his BBC features on ancient Egypt and has written several books on archaeological subjects. Among them, The Lost Pharaohs, Life Under the Pharaohs, The Bull of Minos, and Seeing Roman Britain, and a bunch of others. And he also wrote fiction. This just reads fantastic. Of course, there are 80 million books on the subject of the Roman invasion of Britain, and Roman Britain just in general. But I always go to the ones I keep, the ones that are in this room, even on well-trod subjects, are the ones that are really, really good, the ones that I keep going back to. Now, I've had 100 books on Roman Britain, and I do believe this is the only one in this room. And there's a reason for that. The next one is the counterpart to something that we saw on the last shelf of this bookcase. The last time we did Audubon's, an oversized book of Audubon's quadrupeds, of mammals of North America. And this is, of course, the birds of America. This is not the whole thing, but this is the kind of thing that you really want. A bigger version that allows you to see the details that he worked into his pictures, and I've had over the years many versions of Audubon, including the multi-volume old Dover paperback classics that reprinted everything. But I like selections. A lot of the pictures aren't quite as inspired as the high points. I like the selections, especially now that I know the shape of the work, so that I don't need to have it in front of me. Then I like selections. The only problem with this one is that, as those of you who are anal retentive will already be shouting at the camera, it should be with the other one. I will fix that when I reorganize this whole room. And then the last book on this bookshelf is a classic, and it's a kid's book, but I can't do without it. And I chose a big illustrated version, although I have 2 paperback versions as well somewhere else in the apartment. This is The Velveteen Rabbit. And the reason I chose it is, some of you must see it coming. If you had to guess why I chose this book, I think a lot of you would be able to guess. It's the Skin Horse. It's the advice that the Skin Horse gives to the Velveteen Rabbit about being real, and about how it hurts, but it's worth it. And it's not pretty. But I love the book anyway. I love it just in general. And this has beautiful illustrations by Donna Green, and it was free at some sort of charity thing. So and it's the one I want in this room anyway. And there you go. That is the second bookshelf of the skinny west wall bookcase. So we'll move on from here to the next shelf. Now I have to warn you. I have to warn you ahead of time. The next shelf is a theme. It isn't hodgepodge like this. It's actually grouped around a theme. So it might get a little tedious, and I won't hold it against you if you skip ahead. But we'll get to that next time. For now, I've got to go out in the world. So I'll see you later, BookTube. Thank you.